saying of the day is more is lost by indecision than making the wrong decision. That was by Marcus Cicero, and I think he's right. A lot of people put off making a decision, they'll put it off, then all of a sudden the decision's made for you. And so you don't have forever to make a decision. It'll be made for you if you sit on it long enough. It will not hatch. Today, the 17th, is a Battle of Bunker Hill right north of Boston with the British. And they had thrown all the tea overside and weren't going to pay the tax on tea. And then had their first conflict of the American Revolutionary War at Bunker Hill. And shortly after that, the war began full force everywhere, and the British ramped it up. Also today, 1972, is Watergate break-in. And, of all the stupid things people have done in politics, that's got to be one of the stupidest. Just read the newspaper. You'll know what they're going to do. And in politics, you follow the opposition so closely, most people have indicated they know what they're going to do. I think right now, Biden administration, they're getting the Federal Trade Commission to go after different people on grocery prices and stuff like that, try to make those an issue. I mean, I don't have to tap anybody's phone to figure out what the issues are going to be, and neither does most people that follow politics just a little. They know what the Democrats are always going to want more government, and Republicans are going to want less, and one side's going to spend more and have to raise taxes. The other one's going to try to cut taxes.
Going back to Watergate, other than the break-in, what was a big mistake that the administration made after that?
Well, I think the tapes, and should have gotten rid of those tapes and just said we had to have those because there was information that could have been detrimental to the United States, and that was it. But they saved those tapes.
Are these you talking about the ones recorded in the Oval Office?
Right.
Right, okay.
And they saved those tapes, and I guess they thought they'd come in handy in writing these books or writing the history, and they weren't going to come in handy with anyone. The big problem, and if you commit a crime in politics, is the cover-up. I mean, how many people have done something wrong and then they try to cover it up, which I think that Nixon would have been better off just saying, we made a mistake, they broke in, they shouldn't have, and we're sorry, and we'll let them prosecute the people that broke in, and we'll be done at that, and we apologize, and move on. But they didn't, and they kept trying to stop it. In every place you try to stop it, it creates a new problem, and it just goes on and on. And that's one of those that should have buried the dead and moved on.
Do you have any thoughts on Hunter Biden's convictions?
No, I think it was everybody was convinced it was going to happen. I was thinking that there's a possibility of a hung jury, but after looking at what was brought out and everything, I don't think the jury had much of a decision to make. I mean, he did it. And so now we'll see what kind of sentencing he gets.
And whether or not President Biden, his dad, will pardon him.
He said he wouldn't.
Right.
But if he got beaten the election, would never run again, and would have time between the time he gets beat and the time he goes out of office to pardon his son, I think there's a strong possibility he might get a pardon.
What about commuting a sentence? What's the difference there?
Well, it's not a full pardon. If you get a full pardon, it's set aside. In commuting, they don't have to serve out the time. And so there is a difference, especially to someone that's in prison. They say, well, we can't get you a pardon, but we can get it commuted. They go, okay. They're not going to sit around and say, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's one. Today was a day that Reagan selected Bush to be his running mate back in 1980. And they approached Gerald Ford. And Ford's people said, we'd like to do it, but be co-president. And when they told Reagan that, he said, just drop that. I mean, he was thinking that doesn't make sense. Just drop it.
And move on.
move on. And they called Jimmy Baker and with the Bush people, and they said they'd be glad to, and it revived his career right there. It was the right decision for Bush, and it was the right decision for Reagan. Also, I noticed that it's your take your cat to work day. I just tell my people, don't do that. That if we had 25 cats wandering around the office, we wouldn't get a lot of work. Take a recording of your cat and you can show it to everybody, and that'll be a lot better off.
Yeah.
And also today's a National Garbage Man Day, and I don't know what you do if you're gonna tip him or something. Do you tape a $10 bill to the trash can and hope that he finds it? I don't know, but they play a very important role in society where they've had strikes by garbage men, and it builds up. They thought that was the cause of the Legionnaire's disease in Philadelphia because they'd had a strike.
Oh, is that right?
And they thought that was the cause at first, till they found out that it wasn't.
Huh.
And so it's another workers' day of some type. There's an old statement, people say 9 out of 10 restaurants close in the first year, and that's not correct. And the answer is like it's 16%, not 90%, that close in the first year. And they don't have the staying power, a lot of them, they don't run surveys, they don't look at marketing, do anything. They're just sitting around saying, we ought to open up a restaurant. My cousin, Fat JB, he had the pancake houses, and he said, people always think they ought to go in the bar business or in the restaurant business. He said, it's harder than it looks. You got to stay on top of details. I was reading a book on management one time, and he said, what is that? And I said, management book. He said, management's when you get a call at 5:15 and your cook is in jail from a DWI, and you then get a call that one of your waitresses has a sick child, and then you call another one's, her grandmother died or something. And he said, and you got to be open by 6 o'clock, serving eggs and bacon and having coffee that's good for them. That's management. I said, yes, sir. I'll remember that.
Nothing you're going to read in that book, right?
Yeah. You can read that book all day long, but you got to learn to go with the flow and make sure that door is open and that y'all are turning out pancakes and all kinds of coffee. There is a new study shows that if you take your kid to Disney World or Disneyland this summer, it's going to cost you about $2,000, and about 45% of the people that go borrow a big part of the money to go. And they had some suggestions on holding your costs down. Number one, save the kids a meal and then take them someplace or fix something before they go, so you won't have to buy any food at the Disneyland, Disney World. It's just so much more expensive. I think that's probably a pretty good thing to do. Them just make them eat before they go, so they'll be as full as possible.
Boy, in Disney World, Disneyland, baseball parks, football games, concerts, those are the places where they've got you.
They've got you. You're going to pay $10 for a hot dog, or you're not going to get a hot dog.
Right.
You can't take your hot dogs in with you,
right?
Or your Coca-Cola or whatever it is,
right?
And so you're stuck. Also, I saw a study this week about what is the most common phrase when you see somebody. How are you? Mm-hmm. And how many people just have some standard answer. Most, we're doing fine. Every once in a while you say, how are you? And they'll tell you everything. You learn, don't ask them, because they're going to tell you, well, my aunt's been sick and I had to go to Vancouver and see her. And, after a while you're thinking, why did I ask them that?
I think everybody's got someone like that in their life.
Sure,
Yeah.
that give you a long answer. I had last Friday and Saturday, the former members of Congress, they have a summer trip. They came to Austin, and I had about 15 of them Saturday night at my house, and 4 former members of the Parliament in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And it was good to see a lot of them. I had Martin Frost that I served with, and Dan Micah out of Florida. He served as a conservative Democrat, and his brother got elected later and was a Republican. And so, that was then Bob Clement from Tennessee was here. His dad was governor. He ran for governor, and the state had moved to the right. And as a Democrat, he wasn't going to win in the governor's race in Tennessee. Probably 20 years earlier, he had won big. But things change. States change, and you look at Florida. Florida has changed in the last several elections. It used to be a swing state, and Ohio was thought of as a swing state. Now those are both pretty solid Republican states. Texas is a solid Republican state. You don't see it. I don't see it changing. Nevada and Arizona both were mostly Republican until about the last 2 or 3 elections, and they've moved to the left, and they're more purple states or Democrat states, and Republicans have a hard time winning there. California has moved more to the left than any state, and I don't see Republicans winning a statewide race there in a long time, or maybe forever. It costs so much money to run in California, and also in Texas. But if you've got 17, 18 TV markets, it's just expensive. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have to run in Texarkana, you have to run out of Shreveport, some ads, and then you'll have in other parts of the state you'll be running ads in other states. But you look at the big markets, Dallas-Fort Worth, that's an expensive market. Mm-hmm. I was in the campaign running for governor one time, and I pointed out at a fundraiser in Amarillo that the most expensive ad at that time was on 60 Minutes on Sunday night. And a 60-second ad was something like $6,000. And the cheapest ad was at a CBS Morning News in Amarillo, and it was like $10. and a guy came up afterwards, and he said, Kent, don't worry, I'll buy you 7 or 8 ads on Amarillo TV. Oh, well, thank you. You got to be thankful.
This is why, and we've seen it on both the Republican side and the Democrat side this week, when they talk about fundraising and how much money has been raised. This is why it's important to hear how much was raised. I know President Biden just had a big deal in California, raised a whole bunch of money.
Raised $37 million.
Yeah.
He and Obama were out there and raised $37 million. Now, the people in California will not see any ads. They're not going to run any ads out there. Right. And there's a lot of fundraisers for president going to be in Texas, but you won't see any ads to speak of in Texas. Now, if you want to see some ads, go to New Mexico. Mm-hmm. You're going to see ads all the time. Go to Nevada, Arizona, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Wisconsin. You'll see a lot of ads.
Those toss-up states.
Toss-up states and go either way, and that they know that. And they've got it narrowed down to precincts. The real experts on both sides, they'll know what the real precincts are that they've got to get a good turnout out of.
And I was reading this week that the path to election is much wider for Donald Trump than it is for President Biden, meaning there's, he could win these states and these states, and he wins. Whereas President Biden doesn't have quite as wide a berth to reelection.
He's got a base. The Democrats have a base, and it starts with certain groups, and they have a base even in Texas that starts with about 39 to 41% of the vote that they're going to get no matter what. And they have the other states. If you take Wisconsin and some states like that, they know what their base is, and they know what they've got to go out to get and how much money they're going to have to spend. The people making the decisions on where they're going to put their money, those are key people. Those are key people. If you look at Trump, Trump's had to spend a bunch of money on lawyers and lawsuits, and so he hasn't been able to, go out and campaign on some days because he is in trial. The judge wouldn't let him go campaign, and he complained about it. One thing that he did do, he'd have a press conference, and he'd say it, and everybody had to cover it because he wasn't out there campaigning. And it's going to be an unusual election, and I think it's going to be closer than people thought.
Do you?
As it gets near the end, every swing state will be a toss-up, in my opinion.
And you never know what's going to happen between now and then.
Yeah, I mean, there can be something that'll change people's mind. When Jimmy Carter was running, everybody thought that he had, blow Reagan out of the tank, and that, but it became an issue. Every night, ABC was doing a story on the hostages in Iran, and that became a bigger and bigger issue. And all of a sudden, it just shifted in the last 5 or 6 days, and Reagan had a blowout. He won big, and brought some people in with him that wouldn't have had a chance otherwise.
Do you remember the late night show, new show with Ted Koppel?
Ted Koppel, and that's what he started on. Every night was about the hostages in Iran.
That was the birth of that show.
Yeah.
And it ran for a long time.
And, they decided to go in and get them, and that didn't work out. They were out in the desert, and they got so much dust in the plane and the helicopters they couldn't fly them, and it made us look weak.
Yeah.
And I'd say this: if Carter had pulled that off and gotten them out, then he'd been reelected with a big margin. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't. So in politics, there's about 90% of the things that are going to be issues that'll decide the election, and you don't have any control over them. I mean, they'll get started, and they'll take on a life of their own, and you hope that those unknown factors don't blindside you.
And I think you mentioned it earlier, when people sense weakness around the globe, they act on it. They try to take advantage when the United States appears to be weak.
Well, when we pulled out of Afghanistan, and the way we pulled out and how fast we did was a real disaster. And it was less than 2 months that the Russians invaded Ukraine, and they moved pretty fast on it. I worry about Taiwan and what happens between now and the election. If the polls show that Biden has less and less of a chance, is that going to get the Chinese to lean more on trying to make an invasion before he goes out of office? Mm-hmm. So that's to be seen. If you look at what's happened in Hong Kong, the Chinese do not welcome dissent. They discourage it altogether, and they've changed Hong Kong totally. Saying of the day was more is lost by indecision than by making the wrong decision. Have a good week.